Peace, this your host, Selah Shalom, and this is the Cosmon Teachings in the words of Jehovah and his angel ambassadors from the Cosmon Bible, OAHSPE. And the topic of discussion today is called Judgment Day. Now, you heard many people talk about a Judgment Day based off a Christian or Muslim mindset, where they give you this big illusion of God casting souls into a lake of fire to burn forever. Sad to say, these were the doctrines of the false gods to keep their subservient slaves bound to them and their heavenly kingdoms. But the reality of Judgment Day is no different than a set date that a person is assigned to go before a judge to receive judgment for the crime committed. This concept comes from the heavenly order among angels, as above so below. The judge being the creator, announced through true God, the jury being the holy council, and the subject being the false gods. Now, Book of East, Daughter of Jehovah, chapter 17, verse 1 through 45, it states, Jehovah judges the false gods and goddesses. Verse 1, East said, the voice spoke out of the light over the throne of God, saying, verse 2, because I admonish both earth and heaven, saying, whoso setteth up more than the I am shall be bound, and whoso hearkens unto them and runneth after them shall be bound unto them. And they heeded not my commandments, but made worshipful other gods than me. So shall they reap the harvest they have sown. Verse 3, because they drew the sword to establish themselves, they were bound by the sword. Verse 4, because they took upon themselves heavenly kingdoms, I bound them thereunto. Verse 5, because they profess salvation in the names of false gods, I let them run their course. And lo and behold, they have shown no salvation in heaven or earth. Verse 6, they have built up kingdoms against kingdoms, standing army against standing army. Verily, they have brought judgment upon themselves. So here you can see it was the work of the false gods that brought their own judgment upon them. Verse 7, hear the words of Jehovah, O ye false gods and goddesses, who set up heavenly kingdoms against me. Verse 8, who slew hundreds of millions of mortals in order to make other names than mine worshipful on the earth and in the heavens thereof. Verse 9, ye who cry out falsely, behold me, I am the light, I am the life, through me is the way of salvation. Verse 10, yeah, ye who have used your names to lead mortals and angels away from the Creator, saying of yourselves, behold me, I am the Lord, I am God, my heavenly place is the all-highest. Verse 11, behold, I had spoken in the olden times, I had said. Verse 12, whosoever aspires to be a king of the earth, or a queen, or an emperor, or a ruler over a nation or people, and I give to him his desire, he shall be bound with the people of his administration. Neither shall he rise to my emancipated heavens till he hath carried up with him every soul that he had dominion over. But he shall be bound unto that people in the first and second resurrection, until even the lowest of them are raised in wisdom and virtue and good works, sufficient for the grade of brides and bridegrooms to my Etherian realms. So here all those who are leaders of others cannot rise to the higher heavens, Etheria, until all you lead is redeemed to purity and righteousness. Until then, you and your followers will be subjected to the first and second heaven belonging to the earth. Verse 13, and if a king stretch forth his arm to subdue and annex other countries unto his own, suffer thou him to do so, for he is magnifying his bondage for the resurrection of the low. Verse 14, and thou shalt apply these rules unto all earthly rulers, be they kings or queens, or emperors, or presidents, or governors, or legislators, or judges, or popes, or priests, or preachers, or whosoever presumes to rule over, or to lead, or to exact servitude from others. And the term of the bondage unto them in the lower heavens shall be in proportion to the magnitude of their dominions. So here Jehovah declares his order. Those who lead others will be subjected to that leader. So your Eddie Longs, your T.D. Jakes, your Creflo Dollars, your Farrakhan's, your Popes, all these men fall into this category because they all represent the doctrine of one of these false gods, and they also represent as leaders. Verse 15, but to whomsoever attained dominion by the sword, or extended dominion by the sword, and by blood and death, his bondage shall be 100-fold. Verse 16, and whosoever maintaineth his dominion by standing armies, thou shalt compute the number thereof. And to him and his high officers, the bondage in the lowest heaven shall be equal to 10 times the number of soldiers thereof, and 10 times the number of years of the servitude of the multitude of his armies. Verse 17, for whosoever taketh from my people for his own glory or dominion shall render unto me the just value. Verse 18, whosoever engages in war, or leadeth in war, or is a captain or a general, and cause the death of whom I created alive, he shall not rise to inherit my emancipated heavens. As long as there remains war upon the earth, he shall not rise to inherit my emancipated heavens as long as there remains war upon the earth. But he shall toil in the lowest heavens of the earth to educate and raise up the drudgers, spirits of darkness thereof, which shall be his labor. So all who engage in warfare will be bound in the lowest heavens, and the only way to rise up in the grades is to go about educating and raising up others. Consider it like a criminal who has been locked up, bound, and was released and changed his ways, and then went about changing other criminal-minded men for the good. Such is the reality of what I'm talking about. Verse 19, and whoso hath great riches and many servants, his resurrection shall be no faster than the resurrection of those that serve him. Verse 20, and whoso hath great riches and yet no servants, but liveth for himself, thou shalt apportion his place in the first resurrection, even according to the good he might have done, had he obeyed my commandments. And he shall do in heaven what he neglected to do on earth. And he shall not rise to my emancipated heavens until he hath appropriated according to that which I give him into his keeping. Verse 21, God said, the words that come out of man's mouth, even though they profess prayers and repentance, are of little avail before Jehovah. But the words that come out of good works done unto others to raise them up are as the sound of a trumpet that reaches beyond the stars. Verse 22, for in all ages of the world there have been deceivers and hypocrites, with temples and churches to worship and professing to serve the Creator, but in fact serving an idol. You see this with the four heads of the beast, Islam, Christianity, Buddhism, and Brahmanism. Verse 23, and their priests and preachers speak good doctrine, but they practice them not, except a little, as a blind to lead the multitude astray. Verse 24, and they live in fine houses, and fare sumptuous every day, and are skilled in oratory, and in doctrinal precepts. But they will not go and serve the poor, teaching them how to live. Again the voice spoke, saying, verse 25, my judgment are upon those that profess me, dealing out their pittance to the poor, while they themselves live above one. When such men die and enter the first resurrection, they shall be handed over to those that are in darkness, and their bondage shall be 100-fold. They preach words of righteousness with their mouths, but in their behavior they lay their foundation for the kingdom of hypocrisy. Verily I give unto them the harvest that cometh of their own sowing. So with that verse you can see what will happen to those who die in the belief in these false religions. You will be subjected to spirits of the same order. Verse 26, these then have been my doctrine since thousands of years, and know unto you before ye deserted my kingdoms. So here, even before the false god established themselves, they were well aware of these decrees. So the whole matter was with those who decided to go against the decrees of the Creator through true God. Verse 27, if such, then by my judgment unto mortals who serve false gods, how much greater then must be the penalty upon the false gods who set themselves up to establish these iniquities. Verse 28, hear ye then the judgment of Jehovah. Whosoever hath established the name of any god but the Creator, and made up worshipful on the earth or in heaven, shall be bound on earth or in heaven, shall be bound in the first resurrection, till that name is no longer worshipful on the earth or in heaven. Verse 29. And whatever god or goddess hath said, Come unto me, ye that are heavily laden, and I will give you rest, for I am the way of salvation, and of delight, and of everlasting life, then that god or goddess shall be bound in the first resurrection, as long as mortals or angels go unto him or her. And you can see this through the doctrine of Christianity with Jesus. Got you believing that you got to go through Jesus to get to God, or the Creator, and that Jesus is the only salvation. All this is false doctrines by Lou among the false Christs. Verse 30. Behold, as such a God called, and they answered unto him, so do I give unto both, the God that calleth, and the subject that runneth unto him. For I give liberty even unto my enemies. Verse 31. But when a subject goeth to a God and saith, Behold, thou hast said, Whether I go, I will call all men unto me, and I believe in thee, then that God shall not put him away. Verse 32. While Osiris was worshipped, I gave unto Osiris the false. Verse 33. While Ashtaroth was worshipped, I gave unto her. Verse 34. While Baal was worshipped, I gave unto Baal. Verse 35. But when any of these gods were no longer worshipped, behold, I gave them no more subjects. Verse 36. As long as Brahma is worshipped, I will give unto him who was before me. Verse 37. As long as Buddha is worshipped, I will give unto him who was before me. Verse 38. As long as Christ is worshipped, I will give unto him who was before me. Verse 39. As long as Mohammedans are upheld on the earth, I will give unto him who built up Muhammad. Verse 40. And when all of you have purified and raised up all those who idolize you, in that same time will I raise you up to the higher heavens also. So when the four false gods reteach their followers the true doctrine of the Creator, it is then they will rise into the higher heavens. Etheria. Verse 41. He said, And now, when the voice ceased, and all was still, the false gods and goddesses raised up their heads, and they spoke with one voice, saying, Verse 42. Thou art just, O Jehovah, unto thee do I now covenant that I will serve thee forever. Neither will I aspire to raise to higher heavens till I have raised up all whom I have led astray. Verse 43. Make me strong, O Jehovah, in this my everlasting covenant. Verse 44. Teach me, O Father, the labor I should do, that thou shalt be glorified forever. Verse 45. Thus ended the judgment. God's marshaled removed them to the places allotted for them, and they went to work. So here you could see how judgment is carried out by Jehovah the Creator among the angels according to the crimes committed. No different than us on earth. If you steal something, you may get community service. If you rob a bank, you may get 15 years. So these concepts of judgment among mortals are no different among angels. Now, Book of East, Daughter of Jehovah, chapter 18, verse 1 through 17, states, verse 1, East said, Such then was the fate of the chief false gods in the lower heavens. Verse 2, But during the last 300 or 400 years, many of the officers of these false gods had succeeded from them, and had set up small heavenly kingdoms of their own, and their mortal followers were called sects. This time period is around the 1800s AD present time. So after all that, you still had angels who came out of the heavenly kingdoms of these four false gods, now being redeemed, and began making the same mistakes the four false gods made. So here you see the cycle about to repeat. Verse 3. These little heavens were for the most part situated on the earth, and usually these small gods inhabited the churches where mortals came to worship. Verse 4. And the preachers within these churches fell under the inspiration of these itinerant gods and their gangs of wandering spirits. Verse 5. In Gautama, which is America, these inspirations were carried to such an extent by these Drujur gods, spirits of darkness, that the mortals of one sect were made hostile, one sect against another. Verse 6. And enmity therefore existed between Protestants and Catholics, and between Protestants themselves, and between all of these and the Jews. And not only on earth, between mortals did these things take place, but these petty gods had small kingdoms of their own, as a Presbyterian heaven, a Methodist heaven, a Baptist heaven, and so on. And when a mortal member died, his spirit fell into his heaven, where he had lived, becoming a servant to these drugers, spirits of darkness. And when he cried out, I want to go to Jesus, I want to go to Christ, he was shown the drugered God, and told, that is he, that which he would believe to be true. For what is bound on earth is bound in heaven. So here you can see the same deceptions taking place again by the Presbyterians, Methodists, Baptists. These churches are offsprings of the four false gods, in this case particularly Lou among the false Christs. Now here is the origin of Mormonism. Verse 7. A drugered god, Payad, established a sect and named it Mormon, and he located his kingdom on earth with his mortal followers, and he became master over the spirits of his mortal followers in the same way, calling himself the true Christ. Verse 8. Payad taught that all good Mormons would ultimately attain to rule over some planet and her heavens, but he never permitted the angels of his kingdom to go out of his reach. He also taught mortals that the more numerous progeny a man beget, the greater would be his heavenly kingdom in time to come. For this was Payad's scheme to make his own heavenly kingdom large and powerful. So here once again, OAHSPE exposes another false religion, being Mormonism. This religion was created by a fallen angel called Payad, who inspired Joseph Smith to his works, believing he was inspired by Christ. And the idea of having multiple wives and having plenty offspring is the scheme of this false god to make his heavenly kingdom populated with the spirits of those that die in his belief. Verse 9. Another Drugerian god, Loganus, established a kingdom on earth and named it Shaker Heaven, pretending he was the true Christ, and his place became a heavenly bondage unto himself. Verse 10. Another Drugerian god, and when I refer to the term Drugerian, I'm referring to spirits of darkness, angels that are not in the way of the Creator. Verse 10. Another Drugerian god, Sayawan, established a heavenly kingdom on earth and called it the all-highest heaven. Verse 11. This Lord called himself the Lord. He raised up a mortal, Swedenborg, whom he took in spirit subjectively into many of the lowest heavens and hells, saying to him, verse 12, Behold, they that serve not the Lord, how hard is it with them? And he further said, This place of darkness is the Bremen heaven. That place of darkness is the Buddhist heaven. But this place of light is my heaven, I, the Lord. Verse 13. Thus did this Drugerian god establish a Swedenborg heaven, and mortals looked upon him as the true Christ, and after death their souls went hither. Verse 14. So it came to pass as had been prophesied of old, Lo, Christ here, lo, Christ there. Verse 15. And as it was with Lu amongst heavenly kingdom, thus split into hundreds of remnants, even so was it with the heavenly kingdoms of the other false gods, Brahma the false and Buddha the false, so that there were on the earth thousands of petty gods' heavenly kingdoms of darkness and misery. Verse 16. Now, all of these Druger gods, whether of China or India or Arabia or Europe or Guatemala, which is America, rejected Jehovah, but took the name of one of the four false gods and protested that he himself was the real and true God and Savior. Verse 17. And mortal sects that followed them did the same things. The Presbyterians professed the true Christ, but denounced all others as false. The Methodists professed the true Christ, but denounced all others as false. The Mormons professed the true Christ, but denounced all others as false. The Roman Catholics also professed the true Christ, but denounced all others as false. Even so was it with all of them, and none of them practiced righteousness and good works, but were warriors and money-getters for self's sake. And this is where we are at today. This is exactly what you see out of the four false religions. You have smaller sects coming out of them. From Christianity came baptism, Seventh-day Adventists, Jehovah's Witness, Methodists. All of these are smaller sects from the head beast of Christianity, Luamung. Likewise with the head beast of Islam. Out of that came the Moorish nation, the nation of Islam, the 5% nation. All of these are smaller sects from the head beast Islam. And with that, I'd like to say peace and blessings. Shalom.
Remember Jah, he was the Maccabee, Jehovah, them never see.